Terrain modeling. A terrain model element is part of MicroStation Select Series 3 and later. The terrain model element is used by the OpenRoads technology, replacing various TIN and DTM file formats used by inRoads, Geopack, and MXRoad in the past. Because the terrain model element is part of MicroStation, it can be shared and used by other non-civil disciplines. Although the terrain model element can only be used in Select Series 3 and higher software, there is no data loss if a DGN model containing a terrain model is opened in Select Series 2 software. The terrain model will not be visible in Select Series 2, but once the file is opened again in Select Series 3, everything will function normally. MicroStation provides the general display controls, including contour and spot labeling tools. MicroStation also provides a tool to import LandXML data into a terrain model. LandXML is the only format supported by native MicroStation tools. Bentley Civil software, powered by OpenRoads technology, such as inRoads, Geopack, MXRoad, and PowerCivil, provide additional tools for creating terrain models from native Bentley Civil formats, as well as dozens of other common formats such as ASCII, DEM, IMG, LiDAR, graphics, and point clouds. Bentley Civil software, powered by OpenRoads technology, also includes tools to edit, merge, clip, analyze, and report on terrain models. Terrain models are easily shared using standard MicroStation reference functionality. A terrain model does not need to be loaded into your drawing to use it. All you have to do is reference the terrain model into a drawing and it can be used. The display of the reference terrain model can be defined so you can view the model different than the source is displayed, allowing one user to view contours while the other views triangles, or both users could view contours at different intervals. Because everyone using the terrain model is referencing it, the updates are automatically propagated to all users. Terrain models are defined by features. There are two types of features: source features and calculated features. Source features come from the source data, XML, text, graphics, etc., that was used to create the terrain model. Calculated features are derived or calculated from the source features. An example of source features in the terrain model are break lines, voids, spots, and boundary. Examples of calculated features from the terrain model are contours, triangles, flow arrows, high and low points. Which features are displayed and how they appear is defined by an element template. Element templates are stored in DGN libraries and allow organizations to set up standard display configurations that can easily be deployed and managed across groups of users. The Bentley Civil Workspace delivered with the software includes element templates for common terrain displays, including the boundary, contours, and triangle display. Element templates can be directly linked to terrain model elements, as shown with the green line. This technique is most commonly used to control how a terrain model is displayed. Terrain models also link to a feature definition, which in turn links to element templates. When a terrain model is first created, it is a good practice to link it to a feature definition. The feature definition and linked element template become the default way a terrain model displays. Feature definition also allows you to define different element templates for plan and profile views. The focus for display of terrain models should lie with element templates. Element templates are stored in a DGN library for easy inclusion in corporate standards. When an element template is used, it is copied to the active DGN model so that model can be used when not connected to the corporate standards. This makes sharing of files easier with an outside source. The terrain element template includes parameters for which features, calculated and source, are displayed and the symbology used to display those features. Some features, such as contours, also have additional parameters, such as the smoothing, major and minor intervals, and label settings. Triangle features include a parameter for thematic displays where you can visualize changes in elevation, slope, or height. If a parameter is not included in an element template, right-click in the blank gray area at the bottom of the dialog, and then select Add, Terrain Model, and then select the applicable parameter. The most common workflow is to reference the DGN model that contains the terrain in your active DGN model. When a DGN file containing a terrain model is referenced into another DGN model, you can allow the terrain to be displayed differently in the other model. This allows the presentation to vary for different purposes without changing the terrain model display in the original DGN file. Use the Element Information tool to define how the terrain model is displayed. If the terrain model is in a reference, set the override symbology to Yes in the Reference section. After changing the override symbology to Yes, you must unselect the terrain model or clear the selection set so that it is no longer displayed in the Element Information window, and then select it again. This is required to get the template parameter to become active. If the template model is in the active DGN model, you can skip this step. Select the desired element template from the template option in the General section. To override which features are displayed by the element template, expand the Calculated Features display or the Source Feature display and set the desired features on or off. Let's start with the practice exercises. Displaying a terrain model. The practice exercises are located in the Practice Workbook PDF that is installed with the dataset. Start by opening the software, whether that's Inroads, Power Inroads, Power Civil, Geopack, or Power Geopack. Set your user project and interface to utilize the workspace delivered with the software. So my user should be set to Examples, Project set to Bentley Civil Imperial, and Interface set to Bentley Civil. And then I'm going to navigate to my folder that has my terrain model dataset and open the Display Terrain Model DGN. Next, we want to attach a reference of the existing ground terrain DGN. So I'll go to File References and Tools Attach to attach the existing ground terrain DGN file. We want this to be interactive, and then we'll switch it to Coincident World with an additional setting. So I click Open, and on my reference settings we have it set to Coincident World, and we want to disable the use of the active annotation scale. Click OK, and it attaches the reference. I can close my references dialog, and we want to select our element information for this terrain. So left click to select your terrain and go to your element information, and in the workspace it should be docked on the, I believe it starts off on the left hand side. I've moved mine to the right. You can also get to element information through the icon on your primary tools. So with our element selected, the terrain model element selected, we want to go to our element information, and currently our display settings are grayed out because it's from a reference, but we can come down here to our reference setting for override symbology. With it set to no, we can hit the drop down and switch this to yes. We'll be able to change the display settings if we deselect our element and then reselect it. So if you just click out in space with your element selection set to individual and new, and then click back on your boundary. You'll notice that my display settings are not all gray. We've got a template here that we can change. It's currently set to none. You select that and hit the drop down. We can expand terrain and select existing underbar thematic underbar height. So select that display setting. And we're in a 3D file. You can see this terrain and how that's displayed. We can also change to another element template with our terrain model still selected. Go down to your element template drop down and switch to existing underbar triangles, and it updates the display. If we want to look at contours and the display of contours, we can go down to our calculated features display, and you can turn on manually, you can turn on your contours. And because my template is set to existing underbar triangles still, my contours are displayed in a generic way. They don't have color to them. Let's go ahead and change our template to terrain existing underbar contours and see how that displays. And also let's try the terrain design contours. And we'll see how that one's displayed as well. In the top of the element information window, we want to expand the terrain model and expand calculated features display and expand contours. This is the setting for how our element template is currently displayed. So if I highlight contours, we get our settings for interval, major and minor. We want to change those to 20 and 5. Contours, major interval is 20 and the minor interval is 5. And you see those update in the display. And then we also want to change the color. So if I select expand my calculated features, expand contours, you have your major contours that you can select and change the display of those major contour lines. So we want to change the color to green. So I'll come down here to color, hit the drop down and select my green color. And we need to remember that these changes are overrides to the element template. They'll be lost if we reassign the element template to the terrain model. In our element information, go back to your terrain and select that and switch back to terrain existing contours. Now we want to change our drawing scale to change the size of the text. So I'm going to pin my element information back over here and zoom in a little bit. I want to see the values for my elevations. Settings, drawing scale, and we can change our drawing scale to 1 inch equals 50. And we can see our numbers here. And I guess I can go back to my top view. And I can also play around with the numbers and change this to any other size. Make the numbers larger or smaller. Now they want us to change back to a display of our existing boundary. So I select my terrain, come over to element information, and change my template back to existing underbar boundary before leading into the next exercise.